This was the Pearl Harbor of the whole deal. Blake, set the stage.
All right, so this appears to be, this came out on Tuesday. It's not clear when it was recorded, but this came out on Tuesday. I guess let's just hop to it. If you're mystified by the appearance of things, it appears that Ben Shapiro is standing on some sort of object, perhaps a table, perhaps a couch, perhaps some like extremely tall Ron DeSantis heels. But we want to set the stage for that because it could be a very confusing image otherwise. So let's roll 85.
There's a wild new theory that's been brewing, and once you see the pattern, you won't be able to unsee it. It all started while watching the absolutely unhinged attacks being thrown at Candace Owens online. Those attacks seriously escalated after she revealed that Mikey McCoy snitched on Andrew Colvett to her through a third party, not face-to-face. She got thrown under the bus, and the internet went crazy. Videos surfaced from 2019 all the way to just 3 weeks before Charlie Kirk disappeared from the scene, showing Trump, Charlie himself, and other TPUSA members openly defending Candace. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a strong feeling, backed by a clear pattern in those videos, that Erica may not have been too happy about Charlie standing up for Candace. Not happy at all.
Yes, the question was about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt. I think it's Yeah, I mean, she still works for my company. I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find...
And then there's Jack Posobiec dropping a jaw-dropping metaphor back in 2023 about shooting in our own tent. That one hit different. But before diving deeper, let's clear something up real quick. All those nasty accusations Laura Loomer was throwing around claiming Candace's husband had a DUI with weapon possession, even trying to get his green card revoked? Completely false. No report exists. Internet sleuths searched everywhere and came up with absolutely nothing. Zero. Done. Moving on. Now the real theory. Charlie met Erica back in October 2018. Before that, him and Candace were practically attached at the hip, inseparable in every way. Then just months later, Charlie made a business move behind her back, and their public partnership split. But here's what people keep getting wrong. They stayed friends. Candace herself confirmed it.
Okay, I gotta say something, but go ahead.
Faux sophistication, disreputable, ridiculous. That's a lot of stuff to say.
Let me tell you my biggest problem with this whole thing, and Tyler will totally agree. You don't act like this is a leader, Ben. This is not how leaders act. You don't do that. If someone's on your payroll, someone you're building a company with, you don't go in front of donors or friends and you bash someone. Leaders go in private and you hash it out, or you say we're done, right, Tyler? That is if an executive at Turning Point would go and bash one of our people like that in front, it would be
publicly on video.
You'd be done. That is not good behavior. By the way, Ben has to be held to a higher standard. Ben is a business owner here. She's an employee.
Yeah.
And so
he's the boss.
He's the boss. And so you know what he should have said is like, boy, we're on different planets. I'm not going to comment on that. We're trying to solve it privately. You don't do that. That's been my biggest problem here. And having dealt with plenty of fun things over the last decade, right, Tyler?
She also pointed out that by 2019, Erica had become the biggest influence in Charlie's life. Suddenly, their friendship was being quietly tested. Candace even said someone reached out to her claiming Erica knew a person on Kanye's team, someone allegedly responsible for pushing those negative tweets about Candace during the whole Kanye situation. The overall picture? Some believe Erica wanted Candace pushed out of Charlie's orbit so he'd be easier to steer. Allegedly, of course. Their friendship basically vanished from public view, especially after Candace's October 7th comments sent the internet into full attack mode. She said Charlie messaged her privately, admitting his donors wouldn't allow him to defend her publicly. Her response? She said it's fine she was fighting for her own survival, literally navigating a firing from Daily Wire while dealing with her pregnancy. She told him, "You do what you have to do. Save your money. I'm trying to save myself right now." But here's the question nobody's really asking. Was it only the donors stopping Charlie from defending her? Or was Erica quietly pulling strings too? Now, here's something worth paying attention to. Every single time Candace has been dragged online and called crazy, she ends up being right. Every time.
Well, we've dealt with a lot of influencers, people who have worked for us.
Where we don't always see things the same way.
Every day, every single day. They're like literally every day, including Candace.
Correct.
We've worked with Candace before, had many situations. I'll say this from my own perspective, which is like, you're going to disagree. You disagree with your own spouse. We talk about this all the time. We have people on our staff, and at Turning Point Action, we actually endorse candidates. So this is different than even TPUSA. We'll have a disagreement. There'll be people that come into our atmosphere that don't like a candidate as much as Charlie likes a candidate, or I like a candidate, or somebody else likes a candidate, or Jack. Something Jack says on his show, something Charlie says on his show. If you go out every time and escalate a situation, you're going to ultimately just completely disassemble what you've built.
It is bad leadership. I don't think anyone has done that take yet. That is bad leadership. Forget all the ideological stuff, okay? Yeah. I think Ben is breaking all the rules of leadership because he looks at this, right, Blake, as like a religious crusade. And I don't mean that negatively.
Months or even years later, people come around and quietly agree with everything she said. She's always been ahead of the curve, and that's exactly why the attacks on her are so relentless. Those attacks hit her fan base hard too. Right after her sit-down with Erica in December, the comment sections were flooded. I used to be a fan, but now I'm disappointed, and I thought she was the real deal, but looks like she sold out. Then, after taking time off over Thanksgiving and returning to her show like normal, people were actually upset she hadn't cracked the whole case open during her break. How dare she come back and just keep doing her job? The nerve! But honestly, the coordinated campaign against her was already in full swing, and it was clearly starting to work on people. Online mobs were ridiculing everything she said, twisting her words, clipping things out of context, and even mocking the way she mispronounced a word. Petty doesn't even begin to cover it. And now, it's about to get a whole lot worse. The Jerusalem Post dropped a headline that should make everyone stop and think America's most powerful ally just quadrupled its PR budget to a staggering $730 million. Experts are already saying it won't work, but there are whispers that the real number could be closer to $1 billion.
Many times, the whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled.
That's an absolutely wild amount of money to spend on public image management. Allegedly, some of that cash is flowing straight into coordinated online attacks, targeting anyone bold enough to hold certain opinions, people like Candace. The strategy? Round up influencers, small accounts, big accounts, whoever's willing to take a check and start throwing dirt. We've been watching this play out all year long. The loudest recent voices coming after Candace: Ben Shapiro, Jeremy Boring, Laura Loomer, and TPUSA members, including Erika Kirk herself. The deeper Candace digs, the harder the pushback hits. Now, the crowd keeps insisting Candace and Charlie were never really friends, that whatever they had fell apart back in 2018 or 2019 and never recovered. But Baron Coleman went on his podcast and shut that narrative down completely. He actually visited Candace in person, and she handed him her phone and said, "Go through it. Go at it." He went through her texts and confirmed they were absolutely friends until the very end. He also noted she has incredible self-control. She's sitting on serious information, and she's choosing exactly the right moment to release it. This isn't just some internet drama to Candace. This is personal. She's fighting for justice for someone she genuinely cared about. She wants to know who did this, who ordered it, who planned it, and why. That level of commitment doesn't come from someone chasing clout. It comes from someone chasing the truth.
I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the whole country is.
Yeah.
The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the hard right government has a mandate. I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Yep.
I mean, that's, and I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? There are some serious questions here, Patrick, and let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. when I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
This week's blow-up between her, Jeremy Boring, and Ben Shapiro sent a wave of old Charlie Kirk clips flying back across the internet, and those clips reminded everyone just how fiercely protective Charlie was of Candace. One clip in particular, from the time Ben Shapiro publicly came at her right before firing her from Daily Wire, showed Charlie finding a clever way to defend his friend without burning bridges with his donors. Blake clearly walked into that conversation expecting Charlie to side with Ben and got a completely different reaction. Charlie was quietly keeping a lot of heat off Candace behind the scenes. The people dragging her name today? They wouldn't have dared pull that while he was still around. But here's the part that keeps coming up was Charlie keeping his support low-key, not just because of donors, but because Erika didn't want him publicly connected to Candace. Everything was kept so private that people genuinely believed they'd stop talking altogether. But if they truly weren't friends, Erika actually has a very easy way to prove it right now. Erika has Charlie's phone. She could easily pull up those messages and prove everyone wrong. Just show the world a text where Charlie said, "I don't want to be friends anymore," or "Give me my friendship bracelet back." But that proof never comes.
One of the huge things, and of course we talked about this last week, but the idea that we're going to cancel Candace over this, because people don't like her tone. People don't like, and that's really what it comes down to. It's tone policing and concern trolling. This idea that Candace isn't allowed to do the same thing she does to every single other issue that she looks at, whether it be Ukraine, whether it be vaccines, whether it be BLM. She says she asks pointed questions. She wants to figure out what's going on. She wants serious answers, and she refuses to go along with emotional arguments.
What's becoming clearer is that Charlie was quietly working overtime behind the scenes to keep the peace, not just for Candace, but for the entire conservative movement. His fans constantly say he was the glue holding everything together, and looking at how fractured things are right now without him, that point is hard to argue with. And then there are the actual messages between Charlie and Candace. He texted her, "Stand for truth. The people are with you." She replied, "I know. Been through enough of these to know that truth always wins in the end." Then he added, "By the way, he was standing on a couch talking about Ben, LOL, too good. He's unhinged. Stay on course." He was cheering her on in private while staying quiet in public. This was happening during the heat of Candace's backlash for claiming October 7th was an inside job, something Charlie never touched publicly at the time. But then, over the final 6 or 7 months of his life, he started saying the exact same things out loud on his own. Candace was first. She was always first. Then, about a month after Charlie's PVD podcast dropped, Jack Posobiec stepped forward and publicly defended Candace.
That's the Candace Owens that I know. That's the Candace Owens that I see present herself to every single issue that she's ever gone after. And so I don't think, and obviously with great passion, because it's Candace after all, right? So I don't think that she's really changed her stripes here in any way. It's just that, this issue, and obviously coming on the heels of such a horrific attack, I think for a lot of people, it's very emotional. There's a lot of, emotions are high, passions are high. But I do think that it just doesn't make sense that we're going to, go around and start shooting people inside our own tent over politically. And I think it's great, by the way, and I'll just throw it out there. I said this on Twitter, but I think it's great that on the same day that we saw people calling for Candace to be canceled, a lot of conservatives that I look up to shared this article, echoed these sentiments, and I went and looked and I saw over at the Turning Point America Fest site, Candace's name was still there, was still featured prominently. I think the top row a little slightly higher than mine, but that's probably because her name is just a little shorter. That's the only reason. And I thought it was great that Turning Point was sticking with her for this event the same way that they've stuck with her throughout all the years.
But here's what's genuinely unsettling: why Jack and not Charlie? Why was Jack the one speaking Candace's name out loud in her defense? One possible explanation that keeps circling back is that Charlie quietly told Jack, "You need to say this," because he couldn't afford to do it himself without upsetting the wrong people. Just a theory, but it fits the pattern. Jack said clearly that every time people attacked Candace's tone or her approach, it didn't matter because she always ended up being right in the end. But then he said something that stopped everything cold. He said that it doesn't mean people should be shooting at each other inside our own tent politically. That line hit completely different once you realize what Candace is now investigating TPUSA's possible involvement in what happened to Charlie inside their own tent, their own political house. Jack said those words back in November 2023 as a metaphor. But what kind of metaphor lands like that years later?
Well, I also want to thank my friend Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. Worked so hard, and Charlie has done a very special job. You know why? He found somebody who's an incredible person. Candace Owens, an incredible person. In fact, Charlie may go down. His greatest achievement may have been finding Candace Owens.
Because right now, Candace is receiving the biggest wave of backlash she's ever faced, especially after putting Andrew Colvert directly on the spot. And if the pattern holds true, if she always ends up being right after the attacks, then what does that mean this time, Jack? Then there's a user named Desire on X who did some serious digging and pulled out some absolute goldies from the archives. And what came out of it was jaw-dropping. According to Trump himself, Charlie's greatest achievement might have just been discovering Candace Owens. And Charlie? He completely agreed, and here's exactly how he talked about her back in 2019. And this wasn't ancient history either. Charlie was filmed saying all of this just 20 days before he passed. 20 days! Yet people are still out here claiming he merely tolerated her, that he was just too polite to say what he really thought. Barron went to her house, sat down, went through her phone himself, and confirmed it they were friends until the very absolute end.
So I met Candace at an event back in November, and Candace, fact check me if I'm wrong, I think I hired you 4.5 minutes after I met you.
I think it was 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes.
It was very aggressive. He was like, "You sit down, stay here. I'm going to get you a contract. I need you to sign the contract and get it back to me."
Hurry,
I was like,
sign
okay,
right here. DocuSign. It's okay. You never heard of it. Just right here. Just
yeah,
initial.
just write your name. I just need you to move your finger, and the deal was done. And the rest, as we say, is history in the making.
It's history. And for those of you that follow kind of our path and our journey closely, it's been quite a 7 or 8 months. And Turning Point was on an amazing trajectory at the time. And now it's just gone exponential. And I believe today, what I knew back then, Candace is unlike any other conservative voice that we've encountered. And because she's confident.
Thank you, guys.
She's articulate. She's charismatic. She's fierce. She's funny. She's direct. And what she has done is she has successfully been able to go between the worlds of culture and politics, something that conservatives are not supposed to do.
Nobody knows exactly what's inside those messages. Candace is still holding back, and why she hasn't released everything yet remains a mystery. But what is clear is that those of us paying attention are on the right side of this story. And this isn't about blindly believing everything one person says. Always think for yourself, do your own research, and question everything. But don't fall for a manufactured hate campaign allegedly worth close to $1 billion designed specifically to silence one woman. That's not organic outrage, that's an operation. One comment on X said it perfectly: no one cared when she pointedly called things out while she worked at the Daily Wire or PragerU or on the congressional floor. It's only because she's independently going against the establishment. That should wake any American up that you can't voice your opinion against the government without massive campaigns taking place against you to cancel you and ruin your life. Then there's another clip from a 2022 event Charlie and Candace did together. More proof, more receipts. All through the years, across every season of controversy, they stayed connected.
She's a great friend. You know, look, I don't agree with everything Candace says, but you know what I don't do? I don't stop being friends with people just because people morally blackmail me. I don't do that, and you shouldn't either. Look, I have different views on things as Candace. I have different views on Candace. I have different views on a lot of geopolitics. Honestly, I traveled the country with Candace. I went to her wedding. I saw her meet her husband. I went to with Candace, which is a fun story I'll tell you at some point. But what I don't like is when people demand, you must stop being friends with somebody. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a left-wing tactic. Don't do that. I'm not saying you do that, but other people do that.
He openly admired her courage, her refusal to chase likes or trending topics, her relentless pursuit of truth, the same thing she's doing right now. Another comment nailed it too. And she's still just Candace, yet today they are using emotional language to control her speech. How ironic. Exactly. And while Charlie privately admired her and even texted her, "If I'm wiped out, be my David." Only you can find the truth. His wife's response to all of this has been to campaign against the very woman her husband trusted with that message. Erica flew out to meet Candace once, not to compare notes, not to work together toward answers, but to tell her she was wrong and that TPUSA had nothing to do with what happened to Charlie. That's what people find deeply suspicious about Erika Kirk. Charlie couldn't publicly stand by Candace, but he still found ways to diplomatically praise her intelligence, her integrity, and her track record of being right when the whole world said she wasn't. And now, Erika is backing the exact people who allegedly made Charlie's final months incredibly difficult.
We should never resort to that. In fact, if you believe what I believe, shouldn't you want me to be friends with people that don't agree with us? Shouldn't you want me to also be a tool of influence? And so I think the world of Candace. She's a great mother. She certainly has very, very fun opinions at times, and she's a great talent. She says a lot of stuff that sometimes I don't agree with, but that's what makes our relationship and our friendship interesting. My advice to all of you, you might not like somebody, but never tell somebody like me to stop being friends with somebody on an interpersonal level just because of disagreement. It's bad. It's what the left does, and we should rise above it as conservatives. Thank you so much.
And who are currently smearing Candace for daring to search for the truth? The whole thing stinks and the smell isn't going away. Hope you can make it, because that conversation is going to be one you don't want to miss. But before we wrap this up, let's take a step back and really sit with everything we just uncovered today, because when you lay it all out from beginning to end, the picture that forms is genuinely hard to ignore. We started with a simple observation: the online attacks against Candace Owens are not random, they are not organic, and they are absolutely not slowing down. If anything, they are picking up serious momentum. And once you trace where some of that energy might be coming from, a PR operation allegedly worth close to $1 billion, suddenly the coordinated pile-ons, the fake reports about her husband, the influencer accounts popping up out of nowhere to mock her every word, it all starts making a lot more sense. Laura Loomer threw serious accusations about Candace's husband, a DUI, weapon possession, green card threats, and every single one of them turned out to be completely fabricated. Internet sleuths searched every corner of the web and found absolutely nothing to back any of it up. Yet those lies spread like wildfire while the truth got buried under noise. That is not coincidence, that is strategy. And then there's the friendship that everyone keeps trying to erase from history.
You constantly have a society that's afraid to think outside of the box, or else they're going to be branded with the scarlet letter. And I'm happy to wear all the scarlet letters when it comes to making decisions for myself and for my right to be free.
And I want to say this before we get to some questions. You know how rare it is for someone with Candace's platform to actually talk about these issues one after the other? You see, the corporate media, they want people like Candace just to say the same thing over and over again, right? Dr. Fauci, may his, sainthood forever be a blessing, or whatever you're supposed to say, right? George Floyd, thank you, for what you've done for us, or whatever, right? Zelensky is the new church, or whatever ridiculous thing that they're trying to say, right? Yeah. Which is what they're saying, right? Instead, Candace is like, you know what? No, I have this platform, and I'm going to say things that are true, and I don't care what you say back to me. And you don't see that at all, actually. In fact, that sort of courage is very, very rare in America, and it deserves to be applauded, truly. It's really special. So, all right, let's get to some questions here.
Charlie and Candace, inseparable in the early days, quietly closed right up until the very end with an entire paper trail of receipts proving it. Texts, clips, public moments scattered across years, all the way up to just 20 days before Charlie passed. 20 days! He was on camera praising her intelligence, her courage, her refusal to bend to whatever opinion was trending that week. Baron Coleman sat in her house, held her phone in his hands, scrolled through everything, and came out confirming what Candace has been saying all along. They never stopped being friends. So why did it look like they had? Why was everything kept so quiet and so private for so long? That's where things get really interesting. Charlie was walking a tightrope, donors on one side, truth on the other, and somewhere in that balancing act, a name keeps coming up. Erika. Candace herself pointed out that by 2019, Erika had become the dominant force in Charlie's world. Shortly after that, the public friendship between Charlie and Candace quietly faded from view. And when Candace needed public backup during her most brutal moments, October 7th backlash, Daily Wire firing, the Kanye situation, Charlie went silent publicly while texting her privately to stay on course. He found clever ways to show up for her without showing up visibly. He sent Jack Posobiec out to defend her publicly in 2023. He started echoing her exact positions on his own podcast months after she had already taken the heat for saying them first. He texted her directly, "Stand for truth. The people are with you. And most chillingly of all, if I'm wiped out, be my David." Only you can find the truth. That text alone should stop everyone cold. He wasn't texting that to a stranger. He wasn't texting it to someone he merely tolerated. He trusted her with something enormous, and now the woman he trusted is being buried under a billion-dollar campaign while his wife actively supports the people doing the burying. Erika flew out to meet Candace exactly once, not to grieve together, not to compare notes, not to say, "My husband trusted you. Let's figure this out together." She flew out to tell Candace she was wrong, to shut it down, and then went right back to supporting the very people who allegedly made Charlie's final months a living nightmare. The people who pressured him, who created chaos around the UVU event, who are now leading the charge to destroy Candace's credibility before she can get to the bottom of it all. And let's not forget Jack Posobiec's metaphor from November 2023 that people shouldn't be shooting inside their own tent politically. At the time, it sounded like standard conservative unity talk. But now that Candace is investigating what happened inside the TPUSA tent specifically, that line hits completely different. Whether it was intentional or not, whether it was a coincidence or not, it landed like a warning shot that nobody recognized until it was too late. Here's what the pattern keeps showing us every single time Candace Owens has been mocked, dismissed, dragged, and called crazy. She has ended up being right. Every time. The people who laughed at her came back around months or years later quietly agreeing with everything she said. And right now, she is facing the biggest wave of backlash of her entire career, which, if the pattern holds, means something very significant is coming. Barron confirmed she's sitting on more information. She's releasing it strategically, at exactly the right moments, with exactly the right timing. She's not doing this for clout, she's doing it for a friend who texted her from the shadows asking her to find the truth when no one else could. This is not just a political story. This is not just conservative drama. This is about whether powerful people can manufacture enough noise to drown out someone determined to find real answers, and whether the audience watching will be sharp enough to see through the fog. So now it's your turn. Was Charlie the one quietly holding back the full force of the attacks against Candace all along? And did his wife play a role, intentional or not, in pushing that friendship underground? Because those two questions sit at the very center of everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments. This conversation is just getting started and every perspective matters. If this video had you thinking, questioning, or connecting dots you hadn't connected before, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to see this. The more eyes on this story, the harder it becomes to bury. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you never miss another episode. See you in the next one!